We are nerding Mary Magdalene. Mary was the first person to see the resurrected Jesus. She was the one to spread the news that Jesus was alive. Hi, I'm Pastor Brenda. It's an honor to meet you in this space. If you're liking this series, hit like, hit subscribe. Love to see more of you here. So there are 8 stories about Mary Magdalene in all 4 of the Gospels. And she appears across all 4 Gospels at the cross, at the burial, and at the tomb. But Mary rarely speaks. There's only one story in which she speaks, and I'm going to share that one coming up here. But she is shown consistently as faithful. In all 8 stories, Mary's character is the same every time. But at Jesus' resurrection, this is when Jesus tells her to speak. He tells her to spread the news that he is risen. He is risen indeed. And this is why she is called the apostle to the apostles. Here's that story. And in this story, Mary experiences something that no one else has ever experienced. I just imagine the pain, the questioning, the confusion, all those emotions she was in at this moment. And then this joy. The story is found in John 20, 11 through 18. Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw 2 white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which in Hebrew means rabbi. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord." Then she gave them this message. She's the apostle to the apostles, where she got to say, I am my Father and your Father, my God and your God. All of a sudden, because of the resurrection, God becomes personal. And Mary was the one to give this message. So some historical notes on Mary Magdalene. In Luke 8:2, we learn that Jesus cleansed her of 7 demons. That's all we know. We don't know if the demons, where they came from, what they were. Back in the day, we don't know. There's some theories that demons were it could be literal demon possession. It could be mental health, and they just declared all of that demons. Or it could have been an illness that also produced something that they might have referred. So we don't know what. All we know is she was healed of 7 demons. She's from Magdala, a town thought to have been on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. This is very interesting. She's Mary Magdalene. She's identified by the origin, by this town. She's not identified by her father, by her husband, or any man, but she's identified from the town. This is an interesting point, and I want you to remember that when we get further on this. She had some means of independent wealth. We learn in Luke 8, 1 through 3, that she was one of the women supporters of Jesus' ministry. She is named as supporting Jesus with money. So she had something there. She was not a prostitute, though she is often referred to as that. You may have even been taught that over time. This all started in 591 when Pope Gregory the Great connected Mary to the sinful woman in Luke. Now I'm going to read to you that story out of Luke 7:36 through 38. And as I read this story, ask yourself, how did the Pope connect Mary Magdalene, again, Mary who had a name attached to a town, who had some wealth, how did she get attached to this story? One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to his home, and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. Do you see how there's nothing there to connect the two together? Now there's another story of another woman who used her hair, had an alabaster jar, and anointed Jesus' feet during Holy Week. That woman was named Mary of Bethany, and this would be Mary, Martha, Lazarus. This family, Lazarus was raised from the dead. But she is named, and then there's a second story earlier in the story of Jesus. Luke records it, and this woman is unnamed and is named as an immoral woman. Mary Bethany's never called immoral. Mary Magdalene is not even in this story, and yet this teaching has stuck on Mary Magdalene. It is because of this association to prostitution, again, it's pretty weak, right? That Mary has become the patroness of wayward women. And there are Magdalene houses established to save women from prostitution. They use that name, which is the name of a town, not the name of a prostitute. And just one of those, you may have heard of this, there was a scandal in Ireland called the Magdalene laundries. These were run by nuns for the fallen women. These institutions operated until October 25th, 1996, where they were punitive workhouses for unmarried mothers, victims of abuse, orphans, and those who did not conform to rigid societal norms. And they were worked to death in laundries. Their children were taken, adopted sometimes, or just taken. And this scandal gained international attention in 1993 because there was a discovery of 155 unmarked graves at a convent in Dublin that revealed decades of abuse, secrecy, and even state collusion to these Magdalene laundries. All of this to a woman who was the apostle to the apostles and never was a prostitute. Early Christians called her the apostle to the apostles. The first couple centuries of the churches and what we have from their writings called her that. This title is not mentioned in the New Testament, but is mentioned in these early writings. But this is because Jesus told her to proclaim to the apostles who went on to proclaim this to the world. And she also taught the message of Jesus to the world. So let's look at this juxtaposition just a bit. The early church elevated Mother Mary to the immaculate birth and a bodily ascension, meaning she didn't actually die a natural death because she was Mother Mary. She ascended into heaven. Again, not in the Bible, not even in early church history writings, but this was just a declaration that was made to honor Mother Mary. Meanwhile, the apostle of the apostles, Mary Magdalene, was relegated to a prostitute. Mother Mary became the one and only impossible standard for all women, and Mary Magdalene was dehumanized and gave us all low expectations for women. Do you see the conflict with this? Now, in apocryphal texts, and what I mean by that is these are the extra-biblical texts, these are the Gnostic Gospels, these are just historical writings and readings that have been picked up. Mary is portrayed as a visionary and leader of the early movement, whom Jesus loved more than he loved the other disciples. Just saying. She is viewed as a special disciple of Jesus who had a deeper understanding of his teachings and is asked to impart this to the other disciples. So if this is how the early church was understanding Mary Magdalene to be, can understand how the men of the church tried to minimize her in the future. Now, I'm just going to make one simple statement here. I've been a woman pastor for over 40 years. I do not have an issue with men of the church. I've done well in this position. But historically, you know this is true. Okay? The Gnostic Gospel of Philip from the 3rd century names Mary Magdalene as Jesus' companion. Companion. Take that word as you wish. Scholarly consensus is no credible historical evidence supports ever a romantic relationship between Mary and Jesus. Ever. There's nothing in all these early history doctrines. There is, not doctrines, documents. Big difference between doctrine and documents. There's a Gnostic Gospel of Mary. It was first discovered in 1896. And there are only 3 small fragments of this manuscript that has survived. So you may hear of the Gnostic Gospels. Feel free to read them. I'm not afraid of these Gnostic Gospels that are written 2nd and 3rd century because it tells you what the church was like back then. It also tells you some really weird things. And if you read them, again, go ahead and do this study. You'll find some kind of weird things in there. And one of these weird things is that Mary was exalted over all of the male disciples of Jesus. And you should also know that of these Gnostic Gospels, only the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and the Gospel of Truth are mostly complete. The rest of them, there's just fragments of them. And if you want to read, there's a story there of how Paul baptized a lion. It's in one of these Gnostic Gospels. So I'm saying there's some things there that you might wonder, but go ahead, study them. It tells you about the first earliest couple centuries of the church. They're fine. Now, Mary's made a popular reappearance here in our current culture, like in the Da Vinci Code and other stories of being Jesus's wife. Here we go again. Rarely in this popular culture, in this new study, whatever, do we see Mary as a church leader or an apostle. But she is always attached to someone through sexual identity. Again, she's Mary Magdalene. She's attached to a town. She has known wealth. She's never been attached to a father or to a husband. But no, us modern culture, we got to minimize her and give her this sexual identity that she can only be this or that. Or you see? But she's the apostle to the apostles. In fact, if you look at these 8 stories in the Gospels, Mary Magdalene embodies discipleship. She follows Jesus. She's healed. She supports the mission with her money. She remains in suffering. She bears witness to resurrection, and she tells everyone about it. She's not an exception. She's the example for us to follow. She's the apostle to the apostles. There's some legends of Mary Magdalene I want to share with you because they're just delightful, but they're just legends. One describes Mary's family of Magdala, as of nobility. Maybe. Some of the legends speak of Mary that went into a monastic retreat in a cave for 30 years, speaking to angels. Some manuscripts speak of Mary's father being called Cyrus, and her mother is Eucharia, and the owners of property in Bethany. Not Magdala, but Bethany, so just saying. And in others, she is depicted as a sinner for not marrying John. I have no idea what that is about. I've never heard that one before, but it came up in my research. I want to say out loud, if you turn down a marriage proposal from somebody, you are not a sinner. Okay? Just saying. And did you know that Mary is why we have Easter eggs? Yes. Easter eggs represent new life and Christ bursting forth from the tomb, the empty tomb. So one tradition concerning Mary Magdalene says that following the death and resurrection of Jesus, she used her position to gain an invitation to a banquet given by Roman Emperor Tiberius. So this would be the emperor post Jesus' death, post Nero, and the next one. When she met him, she held a plain egg in her hand and exclaimed, "Christ is risen." The emperor laughed and said that Christ rising from the dead was as likely as the egg in her hand turning red while she held it. Before he finished speaking, the egg in her hand turned a bright red, and she continued proclaiming the gospel to the entire imperial home. And another variation of that story is that after the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene and the mother Mary put a basket full of eggs at the foot of the cross. There the eggs were painted red by the blood of Christ, and then Mary brought those eggs to Emperor Tiberius Caesar. So interesting, but I'm going to mention this. I'm going to show you two pieces of art. I could have pulled up 24 of this early art depictions of Mary. Show her looking like this. Notice the red egg in her hand. And this is two. Again, I could have showed you many. Now you know why there's a red egg when you see an icon of Mary Magdalene. This is that story. So here's your first conversation question. I hope you gathered with your roommates, your friends, your small group, your family. What impresses you most about Mary Magdalene? Have that conversation. I want to read to you that story again out of John 20, that one special moment that Mary had. And I want to show you three pretty amazing things out of that story that I hope you will never forget. The first one is, before I read it again, is the moment Jesus called her Mary. Mary recognized Jesus, and Mary knew who she was. Her Savior saying Mary gave her the identity that she was looking for in that lost moment. It's a beautiful thought. John 20, 11 through 17. Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her, "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," Jesus said. That's the moment. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father, but go find my brothers and tell them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." So on the morning of this resurrection, the disciples came, looked into the tomb, and went away in confusion, in awe, or a combination of both. But they just didn't stay. Mary stayed. She stayed. She had to know. She was weeping. She was confused. What's going on? I think she was trying to think back to what Jesus taught her, that she was listening to. I saw an angel. What's going on? So Mary came to the tomb, stayed, and wept. Can you just feel this conflict growing inside of her at this moment? And in this moment, probably because she stayed. She was seeking. Jesus calls her by name. And there's that moment. And of course, her immediate reaction is to cling to Jesus. I mean, of course, why not? You want to touch. You want, is this real? But Jesus says in 2017, don't cling on to me, for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. This is something us Gentiles wouldn't recognize, but us the Jews would recognize. This is an insider nod to the Festival of First Fruits, which is the third festival in the spring, and these are back to back to back during the Passover period. You got the Passover, Festival of Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Festival of First Fruits. And these are back to back to back. The Festival of First Fruits marked the beginning of spring, the beginning of the harvest, and is an act of gratitude and a declaration of trust, acknowledging that everything they have comes from God and that more provision will follow. They give a gift of the first fruit. They give a tithe of their harvest to say, God, I'm giving this to you. Please give me a good harvest in the fall when they kick up some more festivals. This is a feast of trust. This is anti-scarcity. Is I'm giving first because I'm trusting you, God, to provide for me a great harvest. I just learned this myself. Jesus rose from the dead on the day of the Festival of First Fruits. This matters. Jesus is the first fruit offered. His resurrection means I also get to have resurrection. 1 Corinthians 15:20 says, but in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead. He is the first, as in first fruit, of a great harvest of all who have died. Do you see it? And traditionally, you don't touch that first fruit after it has been given. It is because it has been offered as a sacrifice. So when Jesus said, do not touch me, and he rose on the day of the festival of the first fruits, he is saying, I am the first fruit. I am the blessing that is to come for all of you. The resurrection is here. Now, one more thing, and this is my favorite part of this story. Jesus was ascending to heaven, which was interrupted by Mary, and he said, don't cling to me, for I have yet ascended to the Father. Jesus interrupted his ascent into heaven to answer this woman's love. He had not yet ascended, but in the process of his resurrection, he is drawn. No, he is compelled to her weeping. God is drawn to my weeping. He stops this act of resurrection for one woman who is weeping. We know in John 11:35, it says, Jesus wept. We know that one because we can memorize that one. This comes from the story of Lazarus resurrected from the dead. And this comes also at that point when Jesus knows Lazarus has died. He knows Lazarus is going to be raised from the dead. And he comes finally to Bethany, and his sisters run out to meet him. Where were you? Why did you let this happen? Asking very real, honest questions of Jesus. You loved Lazarus. Why did you not come when we asked? How many times have you asked those questions to God? Me too. Okay? It's okay to ask those questions to God. And at this point in the story, before Lazarus is raised from the dead, Jesus sees the pain that these women are in, and he says, Jesus wept. God is drawn to your weeping. God isn't cruel because the cruel doesn't weep with the hurting. Can you see that? So here's my benediction to you. Be impressed with Mary Magdalene. May you live your life telling the story of the resurrection. And when you have those questions, those deep, heartfelt questions that rock your trust, ask Him to the first fruit. Trust God for the end, larger story. And while you're weeping, know that God is interrupting something for your weeping. This is true. Be blessed with that. Amen.